Here's the bumper. 1, 2, 3.
This is the INKPULP podcast.
All right, here we go. This
All right.
Hello, everybody. Episode 148.
128. You were close.
You guys are
128. You were good.
You guys are dragging me down. We could have had 30 more of these.
We've been talking about getting some comics and reading them. So I just want to show you guys.
Have you really been reading comics? Look at that.
Oh shit.
Look how sexy that is. Where's the third one, Shawn?
It's in the mail. I've ordered it. And I gotta say, Iconic is quick, man. I ordered it Sunday morning. By Sunday early afternoon, I got a notification it was shipped.
That's a good plug. Go to iconiccomics.com. Don't just buy my books, but buy all the other creators that are on there. Timothy Lim.
I've been putting that link in the episode descriptions, and it'll be on this one too, so y'all can click on Iconic.
This is effectively a sponsored podcast, and by which Shawn gets a small percentage of all the books sold as soon as you click that link. So he's in the Iconic Comics affiliate program. So congratulations.
Right, it's my passive income. But also,
Oh, look at that. That's when it got good.
Still when my art was still good, right, Eric?
Was this good, Eric?
This
is before King of Spies, right before King of Spies.
Yeah, that was before King of Spies.
This is I was trying to akin it to a Mike Tyson fight before he reached his prime. This is Mike Tyson
this isn't Sphinx.
Yeah, no, this is Olympics Mike Tyson. You know what I mean?
Okay, so can you do this? Okay. So try to with your hand, try to mimic the direction.
Okay, so look, here's the top of the screen.
The quality of my work, and at a certain point, just put Arlie and King of Spies and Mr. Face as the last ones. Okay?
Here's what do you call it, dude? Here's like
first years
bumps like this or like Black Science, right? Well, actually, it's like down here for Ulk in Secret Adventures. Right.
Okay.
And fucking, by the way, there's a joke on that. The Italians don't know how to pronounce the letter H. So the first time Matteo was explaining to me what the heck he was working on, he was like, "I'm working on Ulk," and I'm all like, "That's not a thing. That's a fake title." Anyway, so here it is, Secret Avengers, Ulk, and then you kicked into high gear when you go into Black Science. The reason why Black Science is like maintaining, I don't want to make it seem like quality wise, it's like in the middle, but it's because it was such a long run.
Okay. Yeah.
So that level of consistency, month in, month out, cranking it out, and then you start hitting like the Harley stuff, right? So I'm gonna do it with this hand now.
Oh no, there's another book. There's Space Bandits, the one that I did with Millar.
That doesn't count. That literally That literally doesn't matter.
Didn't even touch
like
the razor.
If you never did it, it would be completely the same. Okay. So here it comes, like
you have an empty space, like, and that was
there's like a little buzzer that goes like like it does, like it lost a file. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so and then it jumps like for whatever reason. I think it was because you're like, oh, this is Batman. Oh, this is like really, really fun stuff. It jumps like that. I'm almost at the edge of the screen, so it jumps like this.
Okay.
For Harley,
and then
about Harley.
Yeah, Harley, anything that was like mainstream related. Again, by the way, somewhere in there are like covers, blah, blah, blah. Who gives a shit? Right? So then next thing you know, I lose track of Matteo. And then it's like King of Spies.
Oh, up there. Okay.
It doesn't like, I'm like, that's it. He should just kill himself now because.
Okay. The whole thing that you said already. Okay.
Right.
And then
fucking Mr. Freeze.
Oh, down there.
Oh shit.
He went even lower than everything.
The difference is over here, you didn't know any better. You were stupid.
Okay.
You know what I mean? You were awful. You were building, and then I was like, holy cow. There is no, and my expectation was if it was up here, it's gonna go like it's not gonna be on the chart.
Like the moon.
But like it went like this, and I was like, what the. Actually, it went like backwards. It went backwards.
It went bad. Slide back down.
It goes around the grass.
I'm giving you a hard time. By the way, people who listen to your podcast, Shawn, has actually made a joke about that in regards to my jokes to Matteo about like, no, he just likes, it's not as good as Mr. Freeze, blah, 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 So I'd put up a piece of art and somebody would say, hey, that's not as good as Mr. Freeze.
I love
it. It's going to become our inside joke.
Yeah, it's already catching on. And I also picked up this.
Oh, yeah.
Felipe.
Holy cow, is that a good book? I have that digitally.
Have you read it?
No.
I'm excited to read it.
It's my plane ride kind of like, I take out the iPad while I'm on the plane reading it and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to do all sorts of reading to my flight in Italy. By the way, don't forget to, I just saw it at the corner of my eye, and that is my recommended book, Anytime. Have you seen this, Matteo?
Oh, no. I've heard, like, you were talking about it. Some friends were talking about it, and I wanna, you know what? Right after this, I'm gonna buy Lila Star and that one as well, because
holy cow!
I'm excited about that. I was looking at that this morning.
I haven't seen anything like that in forever, so well worth. All right, so it's not going to matter later, but like I said, we should be 30 episodes deeper than what we are, but man, Matteo is late all the time. Like all the time. We have to literally pull over to the side of the road and be like, he's going to get here eventually. The irony, can I tell what the irony is? Like Matteo, like muscled his way into this podcast. You know what I mean? Matteo's like, I'm doing Batman, I'm doing Mr. Freeze. I'm the king of spies artist. I'm the king of spies, I should be there with you guys. But guess what? I'm going to be late every episode. And I was like, all right, I guess.
Well, that's what superstars do, right?
Yeah. I was like, it's worth the 3 extra viewers that you bring into this fucking podcast to wait for you an extra.
Well, it's 100% more than what you had before. So
300% more, to be perfectly honest with you.
Matteo, you see where it says? You see where it says your name in the lower corner of your frame there, Matteo Scalera? You need to add something after that next podcast, like Matteo Scalera superstar, or put the word
between Matteo and Scalera.
Put the word "the" at the beginning. The Matteo.
Matteo.
Yeah, that's probably
Matteo Scalera.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you're
He's
right.
Not lying. You should totally. And also think about it, right? Me and Shawn in the position of this, like the way the screen is right now, we are both above. You're basically carrying us. That's what that means. Yeah. There it is. All right. Jokes aside, thank you for everybody for joining us. Here is Shawn Crystal. Here is Matteo Scalera. You guys are amazing hosts. I'm glad to be here with you week in and week out.
Me too. I have to apologize though.
What for?
The coughing. I just want to.
What's going on?
I still have.
Here's this story.
Yeah. I still have the fucking cold. It's getting better. Matteo, are you all better now?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, definitely better. Yeah,
I'm getting better.
Not completely recovered though.
Steph is fucked up. She is really sick. But so I was talking to our scientist friend Jim Mahfood, the science dude.
Scientist is loose, right?
And he wanted to put the germs under a microscope to see what this virus actually was. And he sent me the results, and I've sent them to Eric, so Eric can pull them up on screen. But this is a close-up of this dirty virus we have, of the cells of the virus. There's like millions of those Marios in my body now.
It's so awful and borderline racist, but also so accurate. I want to help highlight some of the things that Jim has. By the way, if you want to go cancel somebody, go cancel Jim Mahfood. But like, if you want, I want to help highlight the genius.
Hold on, this isn't Jim's sentiment. This is
this is what he captured.
Virus's sentiment.
This
Matteo
is a snapshot.
Unleashed an American exterminator upon us in Seattle.
The part that I love the most, and the level of accuracy this is unparalleled. But the part that I love the most is the freaking unibrow that Jim was like, I think between this and the chef's hat, this is the I think that's a chef's hat.
Yeah, that's got to be a chef's hat. It's not a stereotypical Italian. I mean,
no, it looks more like a Turkish guy, but
yeah, it does. That's my mood.
You know what's great? Like, this is the guy. I think this is Jim just kind of like busting this out of his ass. You know what I mean? And here we are, art director is going like, this looks more like a Turkish hat. Can you put this through another? This virus is the drawing of this virus is very. All right, we have better things to talk about than the virus. So you're doing okay, but your immediate family, Shawn, is still experiencing the rampage that is Matteo's awfulness.
Yeah, it's a nasty little cold. I mean, I'm on the upswing of it. I think a couple days, like Matteo, it happened to you where it came on and then you felt better one day. You're like, oh, I'm getting better, and then it got worse again.
Yeah,
that happened to all of us. So when I got home from Seattle, it got a little worse and a little worse, and then yesterday it was getting better, and today it's a little better still. But it's a fucking bitch. But yeah, Steph is she went to the doctor yesterday. They got her on some steroids.
Now she's like squatting 400.
Yeah.
She's doing 250 kilos.
Yeah. Actually, this is Steph. Shawn's at home in bed sick right now.
But I mean, at the end of the day, she's doing better now, so it's good, right?
I don't know. When I get home,
that's the point. Ultimately, that's the point. Who cares whether or not she's lapsed into looking like Shawn?
Hey, anybody looking like me is doing good.
I saw the young. All right, listen. You guys had one of you had a good idea, right? Was it Shawn this time that had a good idea?
Well, we started talking about it last time.
Yeah, go.
So Comic-Cons, we remember them before they were like these pop culture festivals.
Sure.
And then like the Marvel movies, and well, it didn't start with the Marvel movies. We talked about where it started, and the consensus was Twilight. Is that what we thought?
In my experience, I don't know if that's the consensus, but in my experience, that's when I first saw San Diego Comic-Con just go berserk, right? Where it went from, it went from like this niche, can barely fill out three or four segment, because I don't know if you guys have been to San Diego Comic-Con, you're the audience, but to explain it, it's like 5 halls, 7 halls, I can't remember,
it's like,
but it's multiple
A through H or something.
Yeah, A through H. So like they could barely fill maybe 3 of those, 4 of those at most.
Yeah.
And then for whatever reason, the year after Twilight, it just went crazy, because I think the movie studios figured out this was Twilight. I think it was Twilight. They realized that fans are willing to show up to this place. So San Diego as an organization opened it up more to movie studios, whereas you could go the day of, right, to go get tickets and just get in, no problem. Geez, that was almost impossible. You could get hotels pretty easily, but the moment the movie studios started getting involved, those blocks of hotels started getting locked down. They would like, settle them out of off-site, or obviously mean like offline with these movie studios for their stars, for their staff, whatever it is. And then there's the hotel prices would just shoot up. And I think at some point, San Diego Comic-Con was helping subsidize pretty much the entire downtown area of San Diego, because of the customer and the business that was in there. It's gotten to the point now where it's spilled out into the gas lamp area, right? Like there's, there are exhibits outside of that show.
And in the hotels now, or the last time I was there, they were in the hotel lobbies too. Yeah.
The point is, like, I think that was the last time I remember that, or that was the first time I can remember where, this isn't really a comic book, as much of a comic book show as it used to be. It became more of a pop culture show. And from there, because I think it became even, I don't know how, I don't know the business side of it. I don't know how San Diego Comic-Con can still claim to be a not-for-profit business.
Do they?
Right. I don't know if they do, but at one point they did.
Oh.
Right.
They've got to be for profit now.
Maybe. Again, I don't know, so don't quote me. But I think after the success of that, that's when I saw the explosion nationally in the United States of like one convention after the other, several of them over the same weekend. I was like, whoa, I don't think this is I don't think this is scalable. I don't think this is help. You know, I mean, it's great for the people who are local who can't make it out to the other side of the country, but at some point there just got to be too many. I remember during our travels when we were doing it pretty heavy duty, we got put in the situation where we had to decide, hey, this show and another show is the same on the same weekend.
Right.
Which one are we going to go to? You know, which one is
Right.
the more profitable one? Which one is the one that's ideal for us because we haven't been to that city and so on. So
Yeah.
anyway.
So, and then, you know, then the Marvel, like you said, the Marvel movies came out and they were everywhere. But as the creative community, we noticed that while the shows were getting bigger, at first, I think we saw a slight advantage to our con presence versus before that. But then I think we hit a point where we were like, these shows are packed and selling out, and these people aren't coming here with any knowledge or interest in comic books. They're coming to get their autographs from the actors and their 8x10s and all that. So this bubble was happening, and I think it's a popping or about to pop. It just because the convention floor, like last podcast, I called Emerald City like the con floor, just hot topic, because that's what these shows have become. They've become like pop figures and merch, and and that's what people I didn't understand. It's like at some point, like these people are going to realize, like, hey, why am I spending money to go into a place to get the stuff I can just get online or at Hot Topic?
First of all, let's confirm. Matteo, have you experienced that as well? Are you sort of like tracking that? Because I think it's different I'll speak for myself. Like, I think it's different for me because I'm not working on a mainstream book, right? I'm not working on a book that effectively goes into comic book stores and is by proxy. I don't have that name to bring the same kind of crowd onto your table like you do, Maddie. So
yeah,
like,
I don't
are
have
you
either,
are
so.
you experiencing like I think right now you're sort of like in this great renaissance of people's going like, hey, I know that guy's work. I want to be on his commissions list. I want to buy the books on the table for him. Or is it similar to you?
Well, to be honest with you, I can only say what I saw last time, but I don't know. Like, we already spoke about it. Like, there's so many elements to it. The fact that, the last Seattle before this one was in August. So I think some people have skipped or stuff like that. And in general, the artist alley this time was filled with mostly people that don't work in the industry. So they had just basically merch. It was mainly prints. So now you have this big, like,
mainly fan art.
Of fan
That's
art.
what we do. What are you talking about?
And
well, I get okay. So when I say that, what I mean is we have worked in the business a bunch.
So we're less about, we're not fans.
I mean,
we're
well,
pros.
I mean, yeah, we're pros. But do you remember there was a time when like the Artist Alley application would clearly state, like, if all you have is fan art, you're not going to get a table.
I don't remember that.
I remember that very clearly.
I don't know about that, and also I never saw the the progression, because when I started doing shows, it was already a big thing. It had just
right.
A big thing. So I don't know about that. Like, what I know is, in general, like, shows like comic book shows in the past, where like, if you went to a comic book show, it wasn't something to be proud of in general.
Oh, is that right?
Well, I mean, it meant you were a nerd. So, now it's kind of cool just to be there. That's to answer to your doubt regarding, why would you go there and just buy stuff that you could buy online whenever you want? I think that a lot of people just don't go there to buy stuff. They just go there to be there.
Yeah, that's a good point.
There's a lot of, like, think about all the cosplayers. Like, they don't even have stuff to carry the things they buy. So they, generally speaking, it's really rare, at least for me, Like when a cosplayer stops by at my table, it's just to talk, but they rarely buy something because they don't
Right.
have, they have their
Right.
So like I think that what has switched is now a lot of people are attending just
To go.
just to go.
And that's a good point too, because it has become about cosplaying a lot. The
Yeah.
Has it?
conventions.
And
For
a lot of
the audience, I think
are
so.
going to see the people that go, because now
Right.
with cosplaying, just attending a show makes you part of the whole,
That's true.
of the whole thing. So,
That's true.
even, I mean, in Italy, we have a huge show that it's Luca Comics and Games, which is, unbelievably big.
It's incredible.
And everybody,
It's
even
incredible.
people that don't know about comics, they know about that show. And people just go there and bring their families just to see other people dressed up.
Okay. Okay.
So I think that, that's the only thing that I see. I see pretty clearly. But other than that, it's hard for me to make a prediction, like to see a certain trend. It's it's really hard.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to sound like I know what it is. I'm just I wanted to speculate and see what you guys thought. Because also this, like, there was this story a couple weeks ago of Funko Pop was just dumping all these toys because they couldn't store them anymore.
Yeah.
What, Eric?
Yeah. What's
Yeah.
happening?
What?
What did you say?
I said what, Eric? You gave a look like,
Well, I think that level of like collectors. First of all, I think that grew away. That's like the freaking Funko Pops to me is like the Krispy Kreme donuts of like toys. It grew way too fast. It didn't quite understand like it. And with any sort of like business model, I think there's multiple versions of it, but they were like, let's strike when the iron is hot,
Yeah.
they weren't being predatory, but they understood. I think if you had any sort of business acumen to you, you understand that your time with that product is limited, right? And they had a point of reference, a similar business to them. Like maybe 5 years ago, I can't remember. It was another sort of vinyl toy, it was like
that sounds familiar.
Mighty Mugs. I think that's what it was.
Yes, Mighty Mugs.
Like
Yeah,
Mighty
they
Mugs
were
for a
awesome.
while was just producing everything using the same exact model. Or actually, I think Funko used their model where it's just like grabbing a license, slapping the shrink wrap thing on top of it, and now you have the G.I. Joe license, the Transformers license. It's just all over the place. And then that went away, and then Funko Pops became the thing, right? And you're like, you have to understand that thing you are also meant for. You can extend it for the end of Mighty Mugs. You can extend it for a couple of years, but you're going to go down that same path, right? Because at some point the oversaturation is there. Yeah. And it's not as if their quality dipped. It's not as if, as a matter of fact, I thought like they got better at the thing that they were doing. You just get to a point where there's like a saturation thing and it just turns. People are like, we don't care for this anymore.
Right. And then Funko yesterday laid off a lot of people. So it just got me thinking, are we seeing like this pop culture thing shrink a bit? And is that going to affect conventions moving forward?
That's an interesting.
I don't know. Like you made me think about this whole Funko Pop thing because what I see, like what I observe, and I might be terribly wrong. I just like to observe differences.
Yeah, man.
When it comes to my culture and your culture, I just love. It's not a matter of like, oh, I want to see where we are better than you. I don't care. I don't give a shit. I just I'm just curious about people and the cultures and how things are different over there. And the differences. And one thing that I noticed is that, especially in the States, you like once you found the new thing, like you start pouring like everything in there. Like even with Marvel, there was a time with I don't know, I would say 10 years ago when things were going great, and all of a sudden 5 Deadpool titles for every superhero. You had like 10 books
Right.
5 books, 15 books, like
Right.
Captain America Forever, Captain America Super Invincible, Captain America
Right.
Black, Captain America White.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you see that, like I see, like I don't see a good thing, you know, because as Eric was saying, I see oversaturation.
Yeah.
So in terms of shows, like shows are getting really popular.
Right.
Well, shows got really popular in the
Oh, yeah.
last years.
Yeah.
So I think that now it's become, you know, a business, and everybody wants to have a show in their city, and the oversaturation, that's what might be happening now, because now you have a lot of shows. Basically, you have a show every weekend, and some weekends they have like 2 or 3 shows sometimes, especially like in this period of the year, like March, April, May. It's gonna be, especially May, like I get invited to I don't know how many shows, like at least 10 shows, you know.
Wow. Yeah.
And maybe this oversaturation is not, you know, that good, because the end of the day, what happens? I'm just thinking, out of my head right now. I just thinking in the moment. I never thought about this, but you know, if you have like 8 or 6 major shows in the States, people that want to be part of the show, they'll go to those 6. If now I have a show that's closer, I'm just gonna go there, spend less money, and I'm not gonna do the other show, you know?
Right.
So in general,
That's
what you're doing, maybe you're spreading the, you know, money and attention that people have for this thing. So
For sure.
each singular, it's like, you know, when you had, 3 channels or 6 channels on TV.
Right.
It was easier. It was really easy if you have if you had a successful show on TV, having millions and millions of viewers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Now you have, Twitch, you have YouTube, you have everything you want.
Yeah.
You have all the streaming services.
Right.
So, it's impossible to make those numbers again,
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's true.
for sure.
So maybe
And
that's one of those things.
Yeah, in Emerald City, they moved to that new convention building, but it's smaller. And so the convention itself was smaller. It felt
But I mean,
more crowded, but I think it was because we were in a smaller space.
but that could also be to Matteo's. Like, I want to start paying attention to. I think Matteo's right, which is where we've come to realize, well, there's an oversaturation, right? But
Right.
it didn't have that tipping point yet. We just recognized, like, whoa, there's 5, 10 shows all at once, all within a month and a half's time. That's a lot, It's almost 2 shows per weekend for about a month and a half,
Right.
But I think at some point I'm looking for that tipping point. You're the Funko Pop thing where they are throwing away product into a landfill. That's clearly way past the tipping point,
Right.
I want to see where, these shows are heavily downsizing,
Right.
and they can't do Emerald City can't fill out, what is it, the Washington State Convention Center, right? Like, they can't fill that out anymore. And, the hotels aren't filling out as much as they used to. That's when I'm like, especially big shows.
Right. That's what I'm asking. Do you
That
think
to me,
that's
like,
gonna-
local shows, I think are still going to get a lot of love, right? Because
Right.
to Matteo's point, it's what they can afford. If it's close,
Right.
they're going to go to that one, right? And as an organizer, I think it's a lot more feasible to make that show profitable, especially depending on where depending on the host, or the guests that you're able to bring on, whatever your budget is. I think those local shows, they may feel the pain of it for a little bit, but as long as they maintain it, local people are really, really, I think, very loyal to those shows. They'll show up because it's a local show. You make it really convenient for them. They don't have to travel all the way to New York to go experience this thing. I think when you really, you guys are going to get a good chance to pay attention to this. Like when you go to a show like New York,
Yeah.
New York, technically local show, but it's also a big juggernaut of a show.
It
Right?
is. It
New
is.
York doesn't have to be as big as it is, but it's that big because it's now that side of the world. People are coming from Europe because it's a lot more accessible than San Diego. And if you start seeing a downturn, or like changes to that show that you're like, oh, I think this thing is slowing down. That would be one of the things that I would be paying attention to be like, yep, things are changing for sure, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, and I also think that it's maybe there's maybe like similarities here to like how we conduct ourselves as far as like what we used to do. So before, and I think that I started recognizing this, like, oh, you're not buying my print because you like me as an artist. I don't know
Right.
if this is true for you guys as well, right?
Yeah.
We like, oh, you're buying this print because you like Ulk, you know, you like these characters, you know. Like I know a couple of times people have come to the table and say something like, oh, do you have anything with Nightwing?
Yeah, I get that.
And you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
I get that a lot.
you know. So it's like, I think again, it gets to the point where, by the way, I'll take your money. I don't care. Like you like Nightwing, I have a Nightwing thing. I'll sell it to you. You know. But my point is,
So
like,
grab a
where is
print
it?
of another character, just erase some stuff and make it look like
Yeah, I'll just draw Nightwing in the
We
background.
should just start making prints with blank characters, and when they
blank characters.
Yeah, just like a generic action
silhouette.
pose like this,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, so I think there's something to be said about just generally the sentiment of how we used to do business versus how business is being done now. Like I've
Right.
seen like Shawn and I, when we were at Rose City, we spent the early, I don't know if we told you the story, Maddie, but we would walk through the beginning part of the shows and just check out people's setups
yeah, yeah.
to see what works. Like, whoa, that looks really good, you know.
Mhm.
That looks really amazing. You really clearly put a lot of thought into how the work that you're doing is being represented, you know. And then I take a look at the stuff that's on their tables and I go like, oh, that's not anything that I recognize. That's clearly about you,
Right.
you know. And so I'd realize, and that's not the first time that I recognized it. In a bunch of other shows previous to that, I started seeing like, oh, these guys are representing themselves as artists. And that's when it stuck to me. I was like, oh, it's changing to that now.
Right.
Whereas people would used to do, remember that guy that would have like, I can't remember how tall it was, like 30 feet,
Yeah,
and
the-
nothing
the
but like
print
prints.
tower. Yeah.
Yeah, of like Spider-Man and Superman and whatever. And people were like, ooh, that's $2, that's $3. I'll totally take that. That's how that guy made his money.
Right.
I think that's slowing down. Things are starting to become a little bit more individualistic in as far as like people who attach themselves to the artist and the work. And for me, that's really super encouraging.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm like, I think we need to start catering our business model towards that more bespokeness of like, we buy Matteo's work, we buy Shawn's work because we love what they do. Whatever it is that
Right.
they're coming up with, we're gonna go freaking buy it. Oh,
Right.
they'll do a Superman thing here and there. They'll do a really, really shitty Mr. Freeze thing here once in a while. But it's like, oh, we're gonna buy that person's work because we
Right.
love their work in general. Oh, we love them as artists. I think if there's any takeaway for me in this new environment, is like we need to start taking advantage of that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you totally. We talked about that in Rose City.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. It's we live in a transitional time. So
I agree. It's exciting though, right? Because
Well,
There's
yeah,
a couple
I
of-
wasn't saying it in a doom and gloom way. I was just wanted to discuss like what's going on and how we can
no, absolutely. I never.
no, I think
I
like
think
when
it's
Matteo
real.
talks, it's really uplifting. Right? When Matteo talks, it feels like there's a future. You know what I mean? Like Matteo is the act 3 of like a like an aliens invading movie where the heroes are gonna win. You know what I mean? Like the apocalyptic movie, like let's say, you know, whatever that where the world freezes over, right?
Yeah.
Matteo is like when he talks, it feels like, oh shit, our heroes are gonna survive.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Shawn.
When
was-
Shawn talks, it
which
is
act
like
is Shawn. Shawn is Act 2 when every
yeah, when
hope
every
is
like
lost.
it's bleak.
No,
dude.
I'm the
Like,
inciting
snakes-
incident in Act 1.
snake incident. Like if this was snakes on the plane, like the people are getting bit in the face and getting like
Okay,
venom
okay.
pumped into their bodies. You know what I mean? Like the comet just freaking hit and people are dying, and it's like, how are they gonna get out of this?
Yeah,
It just feels like the downturn. Mateo's like, oh, here's the end of the movie. So when you
What are
say
you
something
wearing?
like, I'm not really talking, I'm the narrator that talks.
Okay,
like,
you're the narrator. Well,
Yeah.
we can consider you like Act 1 because it's when you introduce all the characters. It's
I'm the
like,
setup. I'm basically this.
Eric's the Sam Elliott of the Big Lebowski.
No, you know, so when Shawn says something like, "I'm not being doom and gloom," please go into the comment section, okay, of this particular video, 1 to 10 of doom and gloom, 1 being like light doom, and I mean light gloom, and 10 being
MF
like
Doom.
that is yeah, like motherfucking doom. You know, like tell us where Shawn is in that range. My guess, you tell me what you think, Matteo, but I think he is at like Shawn is always at 13, like the
Oh my
unluckiest
God,
number
how
of
dare
doom.
you?
No optimism to him whatsoever. Like every time Shawn talks, the color on this podcast, there's like a bright blue.
There's a cloud over
Separated a little bit. Not his colors, our colors.
Our
Yours
colors,
and
yeah. I
mine.
feel like
Yours and
you know.
mine. Yeah. Can you see them desaturated a little bit?
Is it raining on you right now? There's a little cloud above Matteo with a few drops falling.
And
Yeah.
it expands from Shawn, you know, you can see like a cloud of desaturation that's
Yeah.
eating
If this was
our
if
two
this was
spots.
if this was like a weather channel, like I'd be standing in front of the blue screen and describing how the weather pattern is coming right down from Shawn and going onto
You
us
know-
and freezing
you
and
know-
killing everything in the way.
I had some friends back in the day used to call me Quiet Storm.
Yeah, but that was for something else, right?
Yeah, but it fits.
All right, is that the extent of your topic? This is a short episode if this is what we're talking about.
No, see I wasn't
There's
done.
more.
So the ray of sunshine I was
Yeah,
bringing
go
you
ahead.
was, does this mean we're going to see a return to a more traditional Comic-Con?
What do you think, Matt?
Well, to be honest with you, like the thing again, I speak about what I see. Like now, since we've been talking recently about the Lake Como show,
Yeah.
Lake Como is a new approach to the whole thing.
Yeah, it
And
is.
it's not just a return to the old days.
Right.
It's a return to the old days, but with another flavor, which
Right.
is no retailers, no cosplay, no nothing, just artists and just a bunch of artists from all around the world. So you have, really important guests,
Yeah.
a selected number of attendees
Yeah.
that, pay, really, a lot of money
Sure.
to be there.
Sure.
And, but it's done in a very, very, as you say, luxurious environment, which means, okay, so we're getting separated from the rest of the thing, from the rest of the shenanigans. But
how many times do you ever use that in
Never.
your like?
Never.
No,
I wanted
you
to
decided
insert it
to
somewhere.
bust that out today, right?
What,
You
the
opened up
shenanigans?
the garage of like new
The
fucking
Monroe,
words, right? You were like, you opened it up and you're like, ladies and gentlemen, shenanigans. I'm giving you a hard time. It's really, by the way, all due respect, you did it great, man. Way to roll out that word and make it part of your thing. Shenanigans.
We're getting separated again, but we're not going back to where
true.
we were, earlier. Now we're still the nerds, but with the classy nerds. So now we do an exclusive, show with just the creme de la creme of artists, and we have the opening event on Friday. So it's all
Yeah.
it's separated, but not going back down, but separating,
Okay.
going up. So it's
there's some new and exciting potential for shows.
so that might be a really good structure for we might even think about somebody could organize that, somebody with contacts and stuff like that.
To be honest with you, I think it's a
it.
really smart business move, right? Like, how do you stand out from all the other people who are putting on these kinds of events? Well, you make it feel like it's strange how, I don't know if you've ever thought of yourself as like, how did you put it, Matteos? Like, it's just an elite No, no, no.
I thought of myself as a shenanigan.
No. The word that you used was like a more prestigious nerd. Is that what you said? Like it's like more
Classy
elite,
Classy,
classy
nerd,
nerds.
yeah. Creme de la creme.
It's creme de la creme nerds. That has a different context when you use it for nerd.
yeah.
So it's strange to me. By the way, this is an aside. I think of like, oh, Matteo still doesn't think of himself as like an illustrator. He's just a nerd who can draw. You know, like that's pretty freaking hilarious, right?
Well, to be honest with you, I never thought of at myself as a nerd. Like I never had the nerd attitude. Like
Yeah,
becoming
I
an expert
never
at
did
a
either.
specific thing. You know that specific nerd behavior.
Listen to these fucking Lake Como elitists right here. I've never
That's
thought of
right.
myself as
We are the fancy.
No,
ones.
I mean, to me, the nerd attitude is I'm gonna, obsess over this thing and learn that nobody wants to deal with. I'm gonna learn everything there is.
Yeah,
I get it.
I agree.
That's true.
I
never had
Truth in there.
this kind of, but the only time I have it is it's for learning how to draw, but that's a
Right.
different thing. It's not just to know it because I wanted to develop a craft, but I never had that obsessive, constant wanting to know
Right.
more about this
And
specific subject.
when I started reading comics, I enjoyed some, but I wasn't like going nuts reading a bunch.
I think nerd now has such a broad,
right.
definition.
Oh yeah.
that
Everybody.
every time that you're into something, you're immediately a nerd.
Right.
It's
That's
so
true.
strange.
It's a different
Anyway,
meaning now.
I think it's a smart move for Lake Como to do the kind of thing that they're doing, which is how do you stand out and above it? And I guess you guys are right. You have to find a different way to bring in your clientele. Lake Como is serving a very specific kind of people. Number one, people who could afford to I'm talking just from the attendance perspective, right? And also from the artist perspective, like the people who can afford to be there have a level of prestige behind them as far as the artists are concerned to be invited to go there, right? Because it's not open to everybody.
They're not casual collectors of art. They are
Right.
They are.
No, I'm not talking. And you're right. You're right.
The ticket price is so high that there's an automatic selection because if I'm not interested in buy anything other than a couple of prints, I'm not gonna spend $500 to get
Yeah. So that addresses what. Yeah, that addresses what you were talking about 5 minutes ago, Matteo, which is like people aren't going to that show just to go, right? It's not like, oh, I just want to experience.
There's people, coming in from the States, from outside Italy, from everywhere.
Yeah, they're not there to just be like casual spectators or to be able to say, hey, I went. It's like, hey, I want to go there because I have an agenda. I want to buy original art. I want to meet, these guys who are rarely going. Yeah. There's some people in that lineup. By the way, if you guys haven't checked out what the Lake Como lineup is, like, obviously go see Matteo, go see Shawn. But I was joking around and I was saying like, I'm not going to be at my table because there are so many artists on there that I have such a high level of respect and regard for. I just want to go hang out with those guys. I want to sit there and just look at original art from them if it's available, Yeah,
and also the specific, again, like the ticket price. And there's a lot of specific choices that they made so that if you're going, it's because you really want to, be focused on the artist because there's no other, like there's not a cosplaying event. There's not a concert. There's nothing extra like actors or other stuff.
Well, there's one extra thing, and that is the gala on Friday night.
Well, the gala, but you have to pay extra in order to be there.
Oh, that's not included in the ticket?
No. There's another. I don't know how much money, but it's it's a lot.
Oh shit!
And, I think it's smart. I think it's really smart.
Yeah, it's a completely different event, more exclusive. But it's a nice thing. I think that somebody should think about this structure and try to bring it to the States as well, because in the States there isn't something like that. I think they tried to make it a few years ago. What was it? It was Grant Morrison with it.
Oh yeah, something in Las Vegas, right?
Like Morrison Con. No, was it Morrison?
That sounds
If
familiar.
if we're talking about the same thing, then yeah, it was like the Morrison con where people pay, but because it's living off of Grant Morrison's name, right? He gets to have a 3-day whatever, he gets up like a 3-day event where people come and meet him, he does little talks and all that kind of stuff, but
but
it
but
wasn't.
also it was made in a period in which shows were Comic Cons were booming, so
Yeah.
we're exploding. So that was seen as a really posh show,
Right.
and people didn't. I think the reception that they had, the thing that I heard from the people, they were like, yeah, that show for the elitist show. They didn't
Yeah,
see it.
can I
Good
talk
eye.
about that really
But
quick,
now
right?
I think it could be different.
Let me talk about that really quick. I think the spirit of what you're talking about, which is, hey, somebody should think about that and bring it to the United States. I have an immediate knee-jerk reaction to be like, I don't know if that's going to work here, right?
Yeah.
I think you said it before, Matteo, but like there is a cultural component
Yes.
that is like embedded into why it works if it's like in Europe,
I agree. And I mean, like we learned last week, Matteo, like Italy doesn't tax artists at the same tax rate as other people, right? They get a lower tax if you're an
Well, we
artist.
have a lower tax, but you're like, for example, you don't have a pension.
Right.
Well, for all
Right.
the other workers, there's a part of the taxes that you pay that.
Oh, you have like a
pension.
government like Social Security thing.
Yeah,
Let
it's
me-
like it's almost like you're not really considered in the in the whole working environment.
All right.
But
So
on the other
have to
hand,
pay
you
more
have
tax.
advantages because you pay less taxes. Yeah, that's
Right. And then there's something you said where if you own a piece of art, you have to register it.
Well, if I want to ship it, I have to register it. But for example, I can't ship it myself because since I don't have a company, I'm not allowed to sell my
I
stuff
see.
personally to private.
I see what you're saying.
All right,
yeah,
listen, shut up. I had a point to make.
Well, yeah,
which
okay,
is
I'm going to bring
say-
it back. Let me bring it back. My only point
Okay.
was it seems that in Italy and Europe, being an artist and art in general is more revered and celebrated. To Eric's
Yeah.
point.
So again, culturally, it's more. It would be more acceptable. So that's the reason why anytime I talk about Cuomo to somebody here in the United States, they do what you're doing. The example that you said, Matteo, which is like, oh, this comes off as like a little bit elitist. This comes off as a little bit of whatever, and it's not inaccurate. I don't think that it's. I don't think that they're. They put a lot of like elitist kind of dismissive attitude to it, but when it comes to art in general, right? I've seen in my experience of going to shows over in Italy, there is to Shawn's point, there is a level of regard, to the illustrators that are there, right? Like I've seen the way back in the day when I was in Lucca, and they would have the tents there for the original art dealers. It's a different vibe. It is actually treated like, whoa, this is an amazing piece of art. I remember when you were helping me hunt for an original Topi.
Mhm.
And you knew somebody who had one who was selling it because there was like a scratch on the back, and how heavily I was weirded out by it because it was like a weird, like the paper had torn on the back for where it was mounted on the thing. And it was heavily, that was like, oof, that's bad. That's, that's a mark against it. And suddenly it made it affordable for me. And I thought, oh, they think of this stuff very differently here.
Yeah.
Right. They really do have an appreciation, not just in the artists themselves, but actually how the way these images are being preserved and represented. And to that end, you could call that elitist, but I think that's the reason why Como works, right? Because the people who put it on have an idea of that presentation, of that value. Whereas here, it's like, oh, I don't understand. Like I remember distinctly one Heroes Comic Con that we were at, and some guy commissioned me for a Poison Ivy. And he's like, oh, I don't understand why he charged me this much when it doesn't, the picture in their head of what Poison Ivy should be based on another Poison Ivy thing that I drew, it wasn't the same. They're almost like reacting to it as like, well, line for line, this is less than what he did on that other Poison Ivy. And I was like, right, there's a very different attitude here.
Yeah. But also at the same time, let me point out that, for example, like until a few years ago, like in Italy or in France, nobody knew what a commission was, you know.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
really?
that's true.
I didn't know
So
that.
people will expect you to do a sketch for free.
Oh, right, right,
Yeah.
right. I do.
So I don't know about that. Like,
Okay,
I don't really know about that.
but
I
that's a
think
different culture, right? Go
from
ahead.
like
Sorry.
on one end, there's this in Europe, especially France, I would say, or in Italy, the artist is seen more as revered as an artist, and that's good. But on the other hand, like there isn't a real it's the artist is not seen as a businessman as well,
Right.
which you guys have in the States, and you
Yeah.
bring that thing to the
That's
table, which is great.
that's new though. That is new here.
Well,
Is it
it's
Shawn?
new, but it's newer in Europe, you know, like
Right.
it's
Yeah,
never
yeah,
happened. Like here in the States, like I get asked how much do they owe me when I sign something. Like
right,
in
right,
Europe, you don't even ask like a signature. It's for free.
right, right,
It doesn't, you know.
right. I get that.
So, and I'm not saying that's either a good thing or a bad thing. What I'm saying is that, you know, it's you know, the way you were talking about it, it looks like, oh, artists is so appreciated over there, and over
Mhm.
here they're not. It's not. It's, you know, it's
It's
not
not that
exactly.
simple. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not yeah.
That's interesting.
I feel like Shawn wants to move to where you're at right now, dude.
I
Shawn?
do. I do.
Yeah, I knew it.
I would
Matteo, make room in your house. Shawn's coming.
Sure, man.
the crystal cruise.
Well,
coming.
I've always told him, like in Italy, to be honest with you, once you make a certain amount of money per month, you're pretty much good. Unless you want to live in a specific place like Milan or Rome, there are really, you know, there's really
Expensive.
expensive areas in there. But if you want to live here, for example, in Parma, you don't, you know, need to live in the center in an amazing house. But you know, you're fine with, you know, living in a nice place. But it's that, like, you can make a pretty decent living without making this incredible amount of money, you know.
What Matteo is saying is that he is actually making an incredible amount of money.
Yeah.
He just chooses to
I'm
live in
doing
a
really well.
simpler, in a simple place. All right, that's a shorter episode
Wait,
than we typically
wait,
do.
wait,
You have
wait. No,
something
no.
more?
I got one more question. One for you,
Mhm.
Eric. So you just released issue 3 through Iconic of
Yep.
Athena.
Yeah.
Is it going to be monthly now? The releases 4, 5, and
No,
6.
it's still about 2 months, 3 months
Okay.
apart. It's just it's weird how, and I think I told you guys this offline, but it's weird how you have to put on different hats, right? The moment you take on your art, and this is the thing that I wanted to learn. I was genuinely interested in learning this, is like, what other things do I not know? Right. And I want to learn all of those other things. Because from here on down, if I ever get into this situation with somebody else that suddenly I'm like work for hire again, or somebody's asking me, I'm like, I'm going to ask for the world. And they're like, well, we can't. I'm like, no, fuck that. That's bullshit.
Right.
Like, I know better than that, you know?
Right.
So
right,
unless something
right.
tremendous, like something significant changes, I'll know the business end of it, as opposed to, and by the way, you guys talked about it very briefly just now, where it's like people understand the value of, you know, the business of being a comic book artist and charging for a signature, whereas overseas it's like, you know, it's almost built in. I think there's something to be said about like knowing what the heck you're doing when you're doing self-publishing, right? Or when you're doing creator-owned publishing, because somewhere along the line, and it's not, I don't think it's malicious, right? But the moment you start getting into the business dealings of this thing outside of the creative, the person on the other end of the table are obviously going to do their best to make their part of the business as advantageous as possible. And you've got to know better. Without going into specifics, we have conversations offline all the time. Matteo just ran into it just recently, where it's like, hey, this makes sense to me, right? As far as like his like business venture, right? He was like, this makes sense to me, but this person is saying something else. Does this make sense to you guys? I'd love that conversation.
Yeah.
Because suddenly we're we're zoned in on like, okay, the stuff that we just kind of like before, oh, that's not drawing, that's not the presentation of the book or the layout or whatever the heck, the actual book itself. Like as soon as we go into, wait, that money doesn't break down correctly, right? That doesn't make sense. Why is that only favoring, this business, this person's, like that used to just make sense to us because it wasn't important. Now we want to know. And even if it turns out to be the exact same as it was previously, at least we know where it's coming from. But all of a sudden, and this to Matteo's just most recent experience, he's going like, wait, that doesn't make sense. I love that. That's a different hat that I have to put on these days when I'm doing Athena stuff, right? Because you start paying attention to like, oh, I can do, like in my case, I can do this sale. Here is my bottom line, right? Like here's my profit margin and here's what I can offer it to, because I know I'll risk the profit margin up front, because I know once I lower the price, it becomes almost impossible for somebody to not want to buy all 3 books. And I just have to maintain a certain profit margin in order for it to still not to be profitable, but I'll reduce the amount of profit I'm making because I know it leads right back into the ecosystem that is my books, right? That's all to say, hey, I'd love to be able to release this stuff monthly, but the different hats that I put on, from like helping my editor and going, like Giuliano just delivered a bunch of pages for book 4 right now just to check in, like all of that slows everything down because everything stops at my table. Now, the good thing in those cases is that it's creative, right? Hey, I get to make creative decisions based on narrative and story. I get to make creative decisions when it comes to color and where how to align what do you call it more, Giuliano more. But there's other stuff that slows things down even more. Now I'm talking to printers. Now I'm talking to distributor. Now I'm talking about like strategy of how to release this book correctly. All of that, and I'm speaking almost directly to Matteo because he's about to go into that crowdfunding space, and by proxy to you, Shawn, when you go into that, creator-owned space, this is the kind of stuff that you either have to be mindful of it so that I have to dedicate this much energy, or you say, I'm mindful of it, but I'm going to put that on somebody else's plate. The way my friend puts it, the guy who runs Iconic, he is like, Eric, I want to keep you in the most creative space as possible because that's where your interests are, right? He is like, I have a lawn, like in my house, I have grass, I have a backyard and a front lawn and a back lawn, but I could cut it myself, right? Or I could think of hiring somebody who will cut it for me so that I can do the things that I'm primarily interested in. I can use that time better in this space. And I'm like, that makes total sense to me,
Yeah, absolutely.
But I want to know how to cut my own grass just in case, somebody is like, oh, I spent 10 hours to cut your grass,
Yeah. Also to understand, like once you cut your own lawn and you see that it takes, let's say 45 minutes, if somebody asks you for $3,000 to make it, you're like, no, I'm going to go to somebody else because for 45 minutes of work is not worth $3,000. That's
exactly.
Though.
Yeah. Or it does, like in 45 minutes, you realize, holy crap, that guy over there can do this in 20 minutes because they're really, really good at it. And by doing that, it cost me so much less. That's where I'm running into these reality. But those are the learnings that I love getting into because that's the kind of stuff I just like, back in the day. Oh, the pages are gone and the book comes out. Cool. I get to sign it at a convention or whatever. That's cool. But now I just love knowing the business end of it that much more. And somehow finding a way to make it creative and expandable. And like I said, once you guys start going into this space, you, Matteo, you, Shawn, please, please, please don't hesitate to tap me on the shoulder and say, what do you think? Does this make the most?
You're going to Yoda my way through that shit.
Dude, somebody just told me, I was just talking to somebody offline, an artist we all know, and they wanted to come out, they wanted to talk about, shit, what were they saying? Oh, they were like, oh, I want to do this book in a more sort of like, in hardcover, but also I wanted to make a little bit bigger in size, their project that they're doing. And I said, don't do that. It's like, don't do that. Right. And they're like, why? And I said, because there's infrastructural things that are built in to accommodate
Right.
a book that's this big,
Right.
right?
In a box,
Versus
so
a
you
book
can-
that's this big, right?
Yeah.
Not just
Right.
the box, but obviously the shipping and handling, obviously
Shelving.
all the little like all the shelf space that
Mhm.
ends up taking up. Like you got to start thinking, and they were like, oh shoot, like that made sense to me, and they kind of knew it off the top of their head as far as like how much everything would cost, but I ran them through the numbers of what it would take, because what people are oftentimes paying attention to is just the upfront cost. By the way, they don't end up paying themselves. So immediately, if you really take a look at a project on paper, you're immediately in the red, right? Because if you're not paying yourself, technically that's not a sustainable business, right? You have to find a way to make it profitable near the end. So let's say you crowdfund something. I told them, think of the initial money that you spend. You almost have to like multiply it by 2, is because that times 2 is what you are trying to get in your initial crowdfunding money, either A, to pay yourself, which is great because if you do the one and done, then that's great. That's how you end up paying yourself. Or you're already looking to how do you manage to crowdfund the next one, because you're going to need to pay that money up front anyway.
Right.
So that's how you keep that gravy. That's how you keep that gravy train rolling, right? Which is like, I cannot afford to pay for this book up front. That's why I'm crowdfunding. But how do I do it for the next one so that I can afford to pay the same exact team, not
Right.
myself, the same exact team to roll it into book 2.
That's
And
what
they'd never thought about that.
Andrew McLean spoke to me about this with his Headlopper stuff. He said he basically got to a point where he learned how to crowdfund a book, use the money that made to pay him to produce the next book. And he said, if you can just get to the first one, then the rest of it, if you just maintain that momentum, is gravy.
And by the way, that's near impossible. The drop off is like ridiculous from book 1 or book 2 to like the next one. If you do it
somehow, like, I mean, I love stuff, but
it's smart.
Built.
It's smart. If you can make it happen, like I'd be curious to bring on if he's open to talking about it, because a guy that I know who's got his hustle game down is like Jim. Like Jim produces books. He puts out product. And I don't know how sustainable that is. Jim Mahfood.
Mahfood. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, like every time I see him, he's got a new book out, or he's hustling to get that new book out.
Yeah,
he's inspiring to me, right? Like he's one of those guys that goes under the radar because his stuff isn't immediately mainstream, right? But there's a reason why Jim is still as sort of like, he is like a long haul train. He just keeps going, right? He's on schedule. He like I don't know if it's every show, but I know that every whatever, like every year he's got a new project that he's working on. Right. And if he's open to talk about it, I'd love to bring him on and pick his brain about that, because that's the kind of stuff that people don't talk about.
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, we could get Jim on here pretty easily, I think.
That, and I want to know how his findings of this, American killing Italian virus, how many tests he did and how many tests.
Maybe samples. I should get Jim. I can see if he'll come on next week with us on Wednesday.
That'd be fun.
All right, cool. I'll do that.
That'd be fun. All right, that's a great way to end that show. Shawn, thank you so much. Matteo, always thank you for making time. Is there anything that you guys want to talk about? Anything that you want to plug? Maddie, your next book that you're working on is still what?
No, I just finished a short story for Batman, the Brave and the Bold.
Awesome.
Number 7.
Awesome.
It's a black and white story.
I thought you were done taking on freelance work.
That was the last one, right?
This was the last one. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I finished it before going to Seattle.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Matthew Rosenberg is the writer.
We talked about that. Was the one where you got to choose the bad guy, right?
It's Batman and Etrigan.
Awesome.
And then now
you used my recommendation.
Yeah, absolutely,
dude. Can you email me the pages? Because if you, I love Etrigan. I might have to buy one of those.
8 pages, just a short story.
I know. Will you email it to me so I can see it?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and then I'm just finishing a bunch of covers, and then I'll be ready to work on my own book. So
there it is.
Excited, and in the meantime, Eric, we've been talking about it last week, and I keep contacting people in order to have my ideas as clear as possible. So I spoke, to people that publish with Image, people that do crowdfunding, and I keep doing it. Just
like I said,
I'm
regardless
making
of what
movement.
you end up doing, right? In whatever capacity, whether it be crowdfunding through image, publishing it yourself, I'm here as a resource for you, right?
Thanks, brother.
Shawn, what are you up to? What are you doing?
I'm busy doing these Marvel Snap cards, but I have started to make movement on my book.
Good man.
Not a lot, but I've started to, and I'm now like considering the idea of trying to develop just a simpler style, because I don't know how I'm going to draw this thing without bringing money in.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
I'm just kind of toying with the idea of, can I do something simpler so I can get it done
Yeah.
faster?
Smart.
But I don't know.
It's not simple because it's lower in quality. It's just simpler because, you
Well,
know,
simple is hard. I mean, simple is, honestly, it's hard to be simple. I just hope the quality is okay.
yeah, yeah. I think
You
you'll
have a
find your way
simple
through.
mind, so it's gonna be easy.
Currently, I've just realized that as for me, my work is, all the Athena pages are done. Obviously, we're at the post-production now where, well, it's not post-production. It's post-production is like all the printing. But let's just say like all the art is done. So I'm just going through all the color, potentially going through all the scripts, potentially going through all of the lettering.
Just wait,
What I'm trying to do now is add more to it, right? Which means, how do I keep extending this story so that people will get more involved with the world? And my plan is, how do I, we were talking last week about how you bring people into your own website, into the projects that you're working on. So my plan is to release like 2 or 3 pages worth of Athena project related, that's not inside the book, but just gives more texture to like the characters. So people will go, oh, I know who that is. And I've got like 10 sort of like ideas here that I'm going to be releasing starting. Hopefully, I want to get them all done so it doesn't slow anything down, but also not have them in full color, right? So that I'm going to render them in gray tone or in this manga style, right? Like in zip tone. And then once all of the pages are done, recollect them again and release that as a book.
That's smart.
Right?
You're going to draw all those?
I think so. Or potentially I'll tap you and Maddie if you guys have time to be like, hey man, do you have time for 3 pages, 4 pages to do work or whatever it is. And then again, just recollect them later on. Just ask friends of mine. So that's
great.
On the docket. I just started working on it last week. My wife was concerned. I was like looking off into space, and she's like, "You okay? Because you look like you're kind of not here." I'm like, "Oh," and I explained the idea, and she's like, "That's really super smart."
Yeah, that's smart. That's good.
All right.
Thank
you, gentlemen. Have a great day. Thank everybody. I want to thank everybody for listening. Go to iconiccomics.com, buy Athena, go to wherever it is in Matteos, go to essentialsequential.com for all of our original artwork and support us that way. Not just us, but there's a bevy of other amazing artists, unsurprisingly more talented, more celebrated than me and Shawn and Matteo combined. Go buy our art and support us.
Well, not Matteo.
All right. That's arguable. All right, I'm going to hit this bumper. You guys have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
This is the INKPULP podcast. This is the INKPULP podcast. Comics, hip hop, life.
Yo.